Hello, trumpet players. We're going to talk today about the difference between air exercises and breathing exercises. This video is in partial fulfillment of a request from Tony. Thank you, Tony, for videos on a few different subjects that he was asking about, and air was one of those subjects. And so to answer his question about air, I want to do 3 different videos, this being the first of the 3, because I don't think we can talk about air without talking about breathing, except that I don't teach breathing. So let's get into this. Well, this will make sense in a little bit. Um, First of all, air is the foundation of my physical trumpet pyramid. If you don't know about my physical trumpet pyramid, you can check out the video here. Basically, that's the hierarchical structure that my routines are built on. And basically, the concept there is that we start with the bottom, which is the foundation, which is air. That's why we're talking about it now. And then we build everything else in the pyramid on that foundation. So air is the most important thing in the whole hierarchy. It is what everything else built on, right? So, you know, it is important, and we're going to talk more about what to do with that in other videos. But right now, I want to emphasize that we don't, as part of my system, we don't do breathing exercises, nor do we do special kinds of breathing. So I know, and I'm not going to single any of these out because there are more than one, but I know that there are trumpet approaches out there to breathing that are very specific, very systematic, and they seem to provide the kind of results that those people are looking for. And notice my choice of words, right? Those people. I'm not looking for those kinds of results. Usually the students that come to me are not looking for those kinds of results. Okay? So yeah, we want to establish here first in this first video that air exercises and breathing exercises are 2 entirely different things. Like I said, I don't teach breathing. I believe that breathing should be natural. And that when your focus on the air is right, the breathing that you do for that kind of air is natural. It happens on its own. The only time I will ever interfere with the student's process and get mechanical with their breathing is when they come to me and someone has told them something about the breathing that is causing them to breathe in a way that is not natural. Okay? That's the only time we work on breathing, is when something needs to be fixed, something that somebody else along the way, sometimes it's themselves that like did this to themselves, right? That's still not natural, right? So that's what we're looking for. We want to have a situation where the students are just breathing naturally on their own. And the air exercises do lead to that, because you can't do the air properly without breathing properly. We just don't try to focus on that side of it. Okay? And the reason for that, by the way, is sort of psychological. You know, it's sort of like when you have the bow and arrow, right? You don't look at your fingers, you don't look at the bow, you don't look at the arrow. What are you looking at? You're looking at the target. You're looking at the bullseye. Okay? And it's sort of like when you focus on the breathing, it's sort of like focusing on the bow. You will not do well when your mind is focused on the mechanics of what you're doing with the bow, right? And it's the same with almost everything that we do. You know, when you're driving, you don't focus on what you're doing with the wheel, right? You focus on where it is the car is going. So yeah, I do believe that when we breathe correctly, I mean when we when we when we use the air correctly when we're playing, it necessitates proper breath, right? Proper breathing. When we use the air correctly, it necessitates proper breathing. The only time that breaks down is when someone goes in there and tinkers with your head, starts playing with your mind about this stuff. Okay? Now there are some approaches to breathing out there that are intended to give you more power. And I'm opposed to that mostly. I'm opposed to that kind of approach for the most part. Um, because, for a whole bunch of reasons, but mostly for stylistic reasons. And maybe, I've had this argument before with some trumpet players. They say that they play with style and they use that kind of breathing. And no, we're talking about people who are not famous, right? People who I just know online, and they say, well, they use that style, and they use style, and they use that breathing approach. Um, I've yet to hear it, and if they're just saying it online, typing text, right? Um, how do I know that they even know what I'm talking about, right? What is their definition of style? So when I'm talking about style, if we're talking about a great lead player, for example, and I do tend to like the old lead players better than the more modern current lead players because they had what I'm talking about. They had style. Now, what is style to me? Style is note shape. And here's the problem. When you play with that much quote unquote power, the tendency is for the notes to stay open all the way. So, we have limits in terms of how loud we can play, right? We have limits. So let's say this is the limit. Let's say this is your highest volume you can play at. And you found a way to breathe that gives you this. You're now all the way up, flushed to the very top of how loud you can play. Well, according to my definition of what it means to have style, by definition, you've got none. If you're playing up here all the way like that, there is no room for style. Let that sink in. Because style is the shape of the note. Most of what happens in style, we can also have vibrato, but also vibrato shapes the note too. Okay? So if you have a breathing technique that pushes your volume all the way up to the max, there is no note shape. The notes at that point become binary. They're either on or off. And when you have that, you have no style. In fact, I've been using this as an example. You know, the old Finale stuff, the music writing software used to have no real, now they have what is called human playback, right? Where they add actual shape to note, where they add a little bit of vibrato and stuff like that. Okay? They add note shape. That's what the part that we're looking at now. They even add phrasing. Okay? And all of those have to do, if you have full volume all the way through something, all of those things that we consider on music playback to be human are gone. At full volume, all of that stuff is gone. So yeah, we don't. That's why I'm against that. Now I'm not talking about the famous people. Uh, You know, the famous people I've heard they have style. So you know, maybe they use that breathing and it's okay. Everyone else I've heard that uses that breathing, besides the famous people, no style. Now you could say, well, Mr. Lewis, isn't that because they just don't have style? Um, I've worked with these guys. I've worked with these guys as students. They've been my students. Talk about pulling teeth trying to get them to have style, right? Because the problem is this on-off thing that they've got going. And if you want to fix that, you have to take that step back. Okay? You have to take that step back and say, what is the core problem here? And the core problem is the breathing because of what it does to the air delivery. All right? So, and you know, the great lead players of the past had such wonderful style. It would just make you cry. The new guys are impressive, and I'm not impressed with impressive. That sounds funny. Um, I'm not impressed with stuff that's impressive. You know, and this is an attitude I've had since the 80s, since MIDI came out, right? MIDI comes out and everybody's crying because the machines are going to replace us. And philosophically, I took a step back and I'm thinking, you know, they're machines. If you're going to play like a machine, then you deserve that, right? If you're going to play like a machine and you can be replaced by a machine like that, then you deserve to be replaced like that. But if you're going to play like a human, if you're going to play like a human, there's no machine in the world that could replace you. That's why, you know, I'm not the most perfect player. That's a choice I made. I hope that makes sense. That's a choice I made. I am not the most perfect player in the world because I don't want to be. I believe that people actually relate better to the more flawed players than they do to the more perfect players. The only people who like perfect players are the people who are trying to be perfect themselves, and they look at that perfection and go, right? Look how perfect. Okay? But when we have flaws in our playing, now I'm not suggesting that we should insert flaws into our playing on purpose. That's just disgusting. Okay? I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, like, for example, you know, there's a lot of people that will choose equipment that makes it easier for them to play more perfectly. Well, I'd like to choose equipment that lets me I'm off on a real huge tangent. And this is supposed to be a video about the difference between uh, air and breathing. But this is the foundation of that difference, right? This is why we're talking about this. Okay? If you are going to work on the breathing in a way that creates an unnatural airflow, you're creating something that's not desirable for other people to listen to, except for those that want to worship the I've many times referred to trumpet worshipers, trumpet god worshipers. Those people will be impressed with your perfection. It's sort of like a musical cult, right? Um, those people will be impressed, and maybe those same people will always be unimpressed with my playing, right? Because I do allow for imperfections. Um, but yes, this is where the humanness comes from. Okay, and I do believe that this is the essence. When we focus more on breathing and less on air, the not benefits, the end result is something that is overly mechanical and less than human. Instead of being superhuman, it's subhuman. Okay? We could say unnatural as opposed to supernatural. Okay? We don't want to focus on the breathing until that becomes a problem. Okay? And I will do a video specifically on what to do with the breathing if it is a problem. Okay? Um, I believe my approach to the breathing is the most natural approach if you have to be unnatural about it. I mean, not unnatural, mechanical about it. Right? If for some reason you've had someone tinker with your head and now you're breathing in an unnatural way, I think my approach to breathing is one of the best ways to do it. And so, other than that, when you treat the air as paramount, the exhale, remember, breathing is inhale, air is exhale. When we talk about air, we're talking about blowing the air through the horn. When we treat that as paramount, the breathing follows suit. Okay? When we treat the air as paramount, the breathing kicks in the way it's supposed to. The only time it doesn't is when you've been messed up in the head. Okay? All right. I kind of meandered on this one a little bit because this is something that I have to deal with a lot with students that come in. Okay? So, and I wanted to stress that part of it, that we don't mess with the breathing until it becomes a problem. Because normally it just happens correctly when you do the air correctly. Okay, we can do, so, I think some people get it backwards, right? They think if you breathe right, the air will be right. But like I said, that's like focusing on the mechanics of the pulling the bow back, when we should be completely focused on that bullseye. Okay? I believe the other way around, entirely opposite way around. When we get the air right, the breathing falls in place. Okay? All right, so that's what I've got for you on this subject. We're going to do 2 more breathing videos, and then we'll get to some of those others. Okay? All right, if you have any questions, ask below. Other than that, God bless you. We'll see you on the next one.